Yeah, what's up? Silas here. So in this video, I'm going to be talking a bit about the NFL and football and a few other things. There's a few things I've learned, and this is where I'm coming from on this. I personally lived in the United States of America. Went there for I was like middle school, high school, and then in high school, I found out that there's this thing called football. Before that, I think sometime during my middle school years, we had gone out with some friends in the neighborhood, and gone out to the actual some field, and then the football we'd play, the American football we'd play, would be there'd be one quarterback with the ball who would throw the ball. There'd be one person who would hike him the ball. The center would give the ball to him, and then there'd be one person rushing. I think it was two people rushing or one person rushing, and then everybody else was a wide receiver, and they just go out and catch the ball. And that's how people used to play. Like that was a playground football that people would play. And it's entirely different from what you actually play when you're playing it on a high school team, on a pee wee football team, which is the ones they play younger, or one that they play in the professional sense or the collegiate sense. So you get to that point, and I used to know football as soccer, what they call soccer in the United States of America, where you play with your feet. This is the thing about American football. With American football, the game itself, when you actually play with your feet, there's a kicker and a punter. And the parts with the feet are the kickoff, the punts, and the extra points. About less than, I think, 3% of the game, 3% of the plays in the game. An average game has like 70 or 70 something. I think an average game has 55 to 70 plays, and you'll have maybe out of that, you'll have maybe 10 at most plays that involve kicking. Maybe more if you're having punts. It depends on how many times you're scoring and things like this. But anyway, it's a smaller percentage. At most, you'll get a game where it's like 15% of the plays actually involve somebody intentionally using their foot to kick it. So there's many things about American football that I think makes American football such a very specific sport. I don't know if there's other teams, other games, other sports out there that have the name of the country of the location to signify what that thing is. But I think there's something very American about American football and the National Football League, which is why there is a tie-in with this whole patriotism there. Now, with me, as being a foreigner in the United States of America, they used to have the Pledge of Allegiance in actual schools, and I was like, why am I saying this? But I would just say it. I would stand up. At least I would stand up. I wouldn't have to like say it every time, but I'd stand up. I'm like, okay, I didn't. As a kid, I know there's some indoctrination aspect of it where I'm like, why are we even saying this thing? But I remember when I came to Kenya, we used to sing the national anthem. So we'd sing the national anthem in school. We were to the United States of America. Hey, we're doing the what's it called, the Pledge of Allegiance. When I actually started playing sports and things like that, like I said, I found out about football. The first time I actually found out about what it really was proper was after was when I entered high school. My last year of middle school, I started talking to one of the coaches who was actually the tech ed teacher in my high school. He was a coach for the wrestling team and the football team. And then I started going to the high school, and I started lifting weights, and I started getting more into football, and I started getting to know the sport. And at that time, I was about 5'9". I think I was about 5'9" and 200 and something pounds, and still pretty fast and still really strong. I think when I first started lifting weights, my first like max on squats was something like 400 and something pounds. So I was already very strong. So the coaches saw me and like, hey, this kid's probably pretty good at football. I had no idea what I was doing, but I went out there, and part of why I'm saying American football, I think, is very close to what America is it's the few sports that I first of all think it's more like playing chess, at least when it comes to the coaches. They're playing chess with human chess pieces. And it's a situation where there's no interchangeability, where you get to a point where it's like, hey, somebody actually comes and plays this position, and you have very different positions. You look at something like basketball, I think it's very easy for basketball to be played, and I think more people in the United States of America play basketball. You just get a ball. Okay, the hoop may be something that's kind of tough to get, but you get something you can shoot into. And at least playing something that's similar to what the professionals play is not that hard. There's many courts all over the United States of America. Just get the ball, you get your hoop, get your 5 people, and then if you play like 3-on-3, it's still very close to what the game actually is. You can play a half court with that, or even a full court. And now there's that 3-on-3 league as well, the big three and things like that, to show how that can still work. But what arena football is? How many people is it? Like 8-on-8, and then you have the Canadian Football League, which is about 12-on-12. on a bigger field. But with football, it's very hard to actually simulate what's happening when you're playing it in the official sense. It's a sport that I think you very much need a ref in there. You very much need the pads because it's a collision sport. It's not a contact sport. It's a collision sport, and I don't think it's a situation where one person can just play all the positions. You don't have that much of a starter in sport. Like you look at something like the NBA, and someone like LeBron James is an amazing athlete, amazing player. He can play through the 1 to the 5 pretty much on that field. What's the point guard, the shooting guard, the forward and power forward, the forward and power forward, or small forward, and then the power forward and the center. He can play any one of those positions and be pretty good at it. You don't have that situation where you can have somebody be amazing at one position and then be able to play any other positions. You look at someone like Tom Brady, who some people are saying is one of the greatest quarterbacks, may go down as the greatest quarterback to ever play the game. He can't play any other position on that football team. He can't. It's just not going to happen. Yet he's still fantastically able at that. Now, someone like Michael Jordan, I don't know. He could have probably played a few other positions, especially in the league today. I think with less physicality in the game, although it's a different game, people are faster. Maybe he might be able to play some other positions. He maybe could play power forward. He's like 6'6", but I think you have someone like Draymond Green, who is I think about 6'6", 6'7". He's on the what's it called, on the Golden State Warriors, and he's I think the more power forward type player on that team. So anyway, so that's one thing I think about the game of football. It's more like chess, playing chess with human chess pieces. And then I later on got to the point where I'm playing a video game of football, started to learn more about that and just thinking like, okay, how do you play this? When you play this, when you're playing a video game and you tell the video game the digital zeros, ones, and O's and whatnot to do what you want them to do, and they don't, the frustration you feel from them not doing it, it really gave me some some level of appreciation for what the coaches go through, trying to get individuals, children, teens, then older, when you get to adults who are making millions of dollars, to actually make these plays and trust in what you're doing and then they just mess up by one thing or things like this. But anyway, so coming back to the thing. So different people in the different places. Not everyone can actually come in and do the same things. And this is one thing I've said about the United States of America. I think you have a situation where there's a lot of diverse people in the United States of America. But diverse does not equal to opposed to. I think you have a situation where in the past there was a lot of diversity, but people were together for a similar reason. Now you have people saying, oh, we need a diverse environment. We need more diversity. Our diversity is our strength. Yet the things they're referring to as diversity are more to, I am opposed to you. Where it's like, yes, we can have diverse opinions about something. But if you have opposed opinions towards something, that's a different situation. If you get to the point and you're saying, okay, this is what I think about the police treating African Americans. Somebody can have diverse opinions. Like I can be like, yes, I get that it's happening, but I think it's happening because of this. And then somebody can be like, no, by you saying that, I am opposed to anything you're saying. It is 100% because of racism. I can say the problem is there. Yes, we both agree on the problem, but we have a diverse idea in why it's happening. But if your idea of why it's happening is completely racism, and then I'm saying it's not racism, it's not a diverse opinion. In that situation, we are in opposition. So, yes, criminal justice reform needed. Is it because of racism? I don't think so. So you have a situation with this whole taking a knee thing in the National Football League and situations like that, and you have people with those opposed positions, where you're getting these situations where that's where the problem is actually occurring. This new law has come up. People are talking about how it's dividing up the league. People have been talking. I think you don't really hear people talking about this much, but they've talked about somewhat how during the process of it, the NFL owners did it themselves, made this decision themselves and put it out there. Now they're talking about how, I wish this was more like the NBA where it's more player-friendly league, even though, like I said, there's fewer players. I think there's like 12, 11 players on a team, whereas in the National Football League, it's spread out to 70-something players. And like I said, that's more like like American football. I think it's a situation where there's interchangeability there, where you can't just have somebody who's just the best person ever and then he overcomes everybody else not being good at all. You have a situation where, Tom Brady has been able to play with people who maybe were kind of on a downward spiral. Their careers were going down. They come to the Patriots, they do well. There's a system there, there's something set up there, but it's like, hey, if you follow this system, we do well. It's a situation where it's like a few players who are good enough to play multiple positions, you may have them be like somebody's really good at offense, a really good wide receiver, may be able to switch to cornerback because they have similar kind of skills or something, but there's more like, hey, I am here on one end. I am really good at this position on an offensive side of the football, and somebody else has a mirror position, but on the defensive side. So that's kind of like a diversity thing there. Different things, same reason. In both those positions, one of them is supposed to try to catch a ball, one of them is supposed to prevent them from catching the ball. Offensive lineman, defensive lineman. So you have your mirror positions there. Be like, look, these are kind of the same body type as I am, kind of same position we're playing in, but we can see the differences that we have here. So there's a lot of things with football that have taught me about life that I look at the world and I kind of see like, hey, I can mirror this in football. I can understand this from a football standpoint. But yeah, so I think that's it for now. I'll come back after the video. This is just a few different things I pieced together while getting the news and story about this whole new NFL rule about people can choose to stay inside. So as I said, with the NBA thing, they're talking about how, oh, I wish the process was like this. I wish we had a representative at the table. But then, first of all, look, this was the owners. This was 31 or 32 owners who actually directly owned the teams that were sitting down. So the decisions they made would directly affect them. They were the ones directly affected. How are you going to get a representative for the players or the coaches? Or maybe for the coaches might have worked. But for the players, you're going to get, what, 2 or 3 representatives for the players, and they're supposed to come in there and somehow actually represent the diverse opinions, diverse and sometimes opposed opinions of how many players? You count the players on the teams, thousands of players are supposed to be counted by this, 1,500 or something like that. Then you count the practice squad players, the people who are potentially going to join. So 2 or 3 people are supposed to change and somehow represent all those people. I don't think it would have. These are employers talking about what the employees are doing, about the product that the customers want. So I think there's a difference in there. And with the NBA, if you actually look at the NBA rule on the flags, it's actually in this player-friendly league. It's actually more restrictive. It says if you come out, you have to stand. That's what it says. It's there. Nobody really complains about that. Nobody says that's racism. Nobody says that's going to make the players come out to do things. Players can wear their shirts. They can wear other things. So yeah, maybe NFL players will start doing that. You can stand out there, stand up, but then wear your shirt saying, I'm going to take a knee, or I'm taking a knee inside, or stay in the locker room. Well, anyway, now into the video of the different things that I came up with while thinking about it. And the video playing is going to be just me taking a walk in the neighborhood. Yeah, so goodbye. Horseshoe theory here, or different things happen for the same reasons. Where, look, the NFL just recently had a new policy where they're saying you're allowed to, there's been the kneeing controversy thing where Colin Kaepernick started kneeling during the national anthem. First he sat down and I think he took a knee after some athlete told him, some athlete that was, I think, in the military said, okay, instead of sitting down, maybe if you took a knee, that could still be part of it, even though that athlete himself was going to stand. But Colin Kaepernick came out and said the reason that he was doing this was because certain parts of the United States of America, certain people in the United States of America are not being treated fairly. And he felt he was representing those people in a certain way. This is black people talking about police violence and things like that. He later on went on and had something with socks with pigs on them, police as pigs. And this has turned into more than just about the police violence or the flag. There's a bunch of things into it, and it escalated into more, resulting in certain dropping in ratings of the NFL and things like this. But that's just the background to it. I think most of you listening to this, come to click on this, have known some of the material on it. So the NFL recently came out and had a meeting with the owners, and they said, okay, now the teams don't have to come out on the field, but if you come out on the field, you have to respect the flag. Now, what does that mean? You've had some commentators, especially Shannon Sharp, Skip Bayless, and Joy Taylor on the Undisputed show, which I watch occasionally. They were talking about how this is ridiculous, it's absurd, why are you doing this? There was one thing that was absurd that was mentioned when they talked about giving a penalty, a 15-yard penalty to anybody who takes a knee, which is ridiculous. I agree with them on that 100%. But now this whole thing of not coming out to the field, they're saying, oh, this is still a disruption, this is still an issue. And then they're asking, what do you mean you have to respect the flag? If you raise a fist, if you do this. So they're complaining about the lack of clarity in this. Respect the flag definitely does mean come out and stand for the flag. I think raising the fist might even be allowed and things like that, but just stand, because some people put their hand on the chest, some people stand, some people sing along, some people do look at the flag and etc. And Shannon Sharp clearly pointed out that years ago, people didn't even come out for the flag. Part of the reason this started with the whole situation was the military started giving money to the NFL. And then they said, okay, we're a business. These people are giving us money. So we're going to come out and actually support them and have our employees and our service people, our all the personnel. This is everybody in NFL personnel. So this is coaches, this is water boys, this is the trainers, this is just the random people on the sideline with holding like the equipment. They come out and they stand, and that's a participation thing, and that's part of their business. That's part of their business model. That's part of what gives them money. Their advertisers, the NFL, giving them money. I mean, the military giving them money. So they participate in that. They give back to the people who are paying them things. This makes complete sense to me. Because I have also defended other people, like Google firing James Damore for his, or freezing him, firing him, whatever, for his political standpoints. And people on the left have been all about this, boycott this, boycott that, saying, hey, if I'm running a company, if I'm running a business, I don't have to do any service or work with people who don't share my political beliefs. This is a constant thing they do. Recently, there was this site, CrowdPack. I just actually had a friend of mine involved in this. They were running a campaign, and CrowdPack, which is a site for campaign funding, crowdfunding for campaigns, they came out and said, after a long time of soul searching, this is paraphrasing, we don't feel it right to support Republicans anymore because we feel we're standing against Trumpism. Our community does XYZ. So someone like Shannon Sharp is not going to go on and say, oh, well, this CrowdPack people, like this percentage of the population actually supports Trump. This percentage of the people actually voted for Trump. So how come CrowdPack is taking away, alienating all these people and saying, oh, they don't have a way now to give funding to the people? No, they don't say things like that. This double standard on the political left, this is a double standard that happens for a lot of people. People have double standards. But this particular one is on the political left, and it's really, really annoying. I support any private business to be able to not do business or to set certain work rules that they want under their business and then let it work. This is recently I talked about the whole situation with Star Wars. Let Star Wars do whatever they want, turn it into an SJW thing, and then let the fans try to complain and protest and things like that, and then we'll see where the money goes. If Star Wars actually ends up still being lucrative, Disney will continue it. If Disney wants to shutter Star Wars for whatever reason or stop it and run into the ground, let them do that. Then the fans can go out and support something else. Just like in this thing, the NFL, people can go out and support other things. If they want to go to the NBA and say, yes, we're going to support the NBA because they let their athletes take a knee or do any protest, go watch the NBA, show the NFL up, go watch other things. This is the way things work. I have no problem with this thing. I think it's completely okay. And I think you will see the hypocrisy from the left talking about how terrible this is, making the athletes come out there. Oh, you're not supportive of the athletes' political standpoints because they're talking about representing certain communities, certain people, so you have to come out and support them. The owners don't care because it doesn't affect them. Sure. Well, how many things do the liberal owners of liberal businesses in the tech industry and other industries, how much do they actually care about the Republicans and people on the political right, about what they deal with? They don't care about that stuff. If you're going to defend one side, be a bit consistent and defend both sides. Or just let it go. Also, it's people on the political right. Don't come out and whinge about Google and all these other people saying we don't agree with people on the political right. If they're on the political left and they have some kind of political thing where they don't want to hire you, don't want to associate with companies and things like that on the right, let them do it. They're private industry. And I think this is more positive. Let people draw their lines in the sand and then see which one works. If you want to be a site that entirely caters to people on the political left, do it and see if that's actually going to be effective. If you want to hire people entirely on the political left, do it and see if that's going to be effective. If you want to hire people entirely on the political right, do it. If you just want an entire socialist company, do it. If you want an entire anarcho-capitalist company, do it. Let's see if these ideas are going to work. And I think part of this is part of the beauty of the world today, especially in the United States of America. Let people have that kind of competitive standpoint, and then that way you can see how these ideas really compete against each other. And then the one company that says, hey, we don't care. We're in the same field as you are in, but we're going to hire more on the person's abilities and what the person can do rather than what they think at home or vote for or things like that, then I think that company will be the most successful. And then you will show people that, hey, yes, these ideas by themselves may be competing in certain ways, but if you actually hire on the focus of what that company is supposed to do, or focus on that more than anything else, then you'll have the best result. But yeah, so let me know what you guys think about the new NFL policy and the reaction that's happened and the expected reaction that you see happening. A few more things on the NFL protest. I'm now watching more news on it, getting more information, and some owners are actually offering, like one owner from the Jets, he offered to actually pay any fines that are accrued to the actual people who decide to protest. So they're still completely, entirely allowed to go out there and protest in whatever way they see fit. Take a knee, wave some different flag, turn your back to the flag, do whatever you want, link arms, put fists up in the air. But this whole idea that people are wondering, like, oh, why are they not being specific about the rules, about what is considered disrespectful towards the flag? These are the same people on the political left who, if you ask, what specifically are you guys protesting about? Can you give us details about why you're taking a knee? Can you give us details about what's wrong, about what's happening? Look at these numbers. Look at this test coming out and saying that, hey, African Americans and white people, if you look at the amount of times they interact with police, you actually find there's no actual bias towards black people. If anything, there's actually white people getting shot more. It's just the fact that the fewer black people actually interact with police at a higher clip, at a higher level. And people say, oh, that's not about it. It's about these other issues. Or when they talk about these leftist policies at these more left-leaning businesses, they have certain policies, conduct policies. Universities have this thing all the time. You have these Me Too and sexual assault type things where people are asking, can you be more specific about what you consider offensive? What's offended you? Can you be more specific about what is racist? Can you be more specific about what is assault? Can you be more specific about how somebody has actually broken the rules in this place? People say no, it's about my feelings. So to have this double standard is something that really needs to stop. We need to start speaking the same language. Another ongoing thing in my channel is part of the problem in the world is people are dealing with X in how they define X instead of what X actually is. That's paraphrasing of kind of what, but that's pretty much, people are talking about things, but they don't want to actually define what that thing is. So people come to that thing and then somebody thinks X is one thing and then somebody thinks X is another thing. And you're both talking about this and like, why won't you help me do X? And the two people have two different ideas of what X is. And in most cases, both those people are actually completely wrong about what X actually is. So yeah, that's it. So another good point of comparison on this is this whole conduct policy thing, or what is disrespectful, what violates the kind of situation, is the YouTube situation, the YouTube and the creators. Actually, there's somebody, George Spave, who I've mentioned before, had a YouTube creators union. I joined it just to see what's going on. I haven't participated that much into it, but he's taking certain strikes. He's met with some of the people in YouTube. They're trying to set, are the people who the creators on YouTube, are they partners? Are they employees? Are they this kind of situation? So this whole change on what is actually banned, what violates situations, what actually gets removed from the site. As I mentioned before, I got a strike on a video. It was never really given to me any clarification on why exactly the video was taking a strike. This is the policy of apparently bullying and all these kind of things. It's not clear. You ask them for clarification, they don't give it to you. And YouTube is this large, left-leaning organization. People are not going to go out and talk about, hey, we need actual clarification for this. That affects a lot more people. That affects millions of people globally. And people on the left don't come out and rally against us and say we need more clarification. And this whole idea of saying, oh, what is disrespectful? And this thing of bringing up that when Colin Kaepernick initially took a seat during the anthem and somebody on his team that was in the military or something came out and said, it's actually more respectful to take a knee. It's more than sitting down. And then somebody's like, hey, well, you're talking about more respectful. This is something somebody in the military told him, you can take a knee, which is more respectful. But hey, if you do something and I just say that's stupid and walk away, that is more respectful than spitting in your face. But it's not respectful. I mean, you can be less disrespectful and still not be respectful. It's not one or the other. It's not just like everything is either respectful or disrespectful. You get what I'm saying there? Another point of hypocrisy in this whole situation. There's so much into this, and I hope this might be like my definitive NFL kneeling kind of thing, where I kind of, if I have other issues, I just refer back to this video. But there's one thing I hear athletes constantly say when you're talking about contract negotiations. This just happened right now. One athlete was talking about another athlete holding out, another teammate holding out from the training camp, from the voluntary training camp. I think it's voluntary training camp, where they come and they practice and they get to know the team and things like that. And then he's holding out, so he's not showing up. And that athlete who did show up was saying, "Hey, I think the best way to do it is to come and show up, even if you don't want to even if you don't want to actually, even if you're not ready, if you want a better contract." And then the ongoing refrain from a lot of commentators, especially the ex-player commentators, who I agree with, they're saying, "Hey, one thing you don't do is mess with another guy's money when he's trying to get his contract. You don't mess with that. That's something that they do the way they want to do it, the way they have to do it, especially when you have your own money already." And isn't this a similar thing with the NFL owners? They're like, "Look, you guys, I know we have more money than you do, and this athlete right now did have more money than the athlete he was speaking about." So they say, okay, if an athlete is trying to get his money in check, trying to get his contracts in check, you shouldn't question what he's doing to do that. If he decides to boycott or not show up or do X and O, say XYZ, you're not supposed to do anything. Now, when the owners themselves are also like, "Hey, you guys are actually affecting our bottom line. If you guys protest and people don't come to the actual games, advertisers start leaving, people are not buying like merchandise and things like that, then our actual bottom lines get affected. We start losing money. The contracts we applied to pay you guys are still there. Your money is still coming out. If you guys are still on the field, I know I think that there's one guaranteed contract right now with Kirk Cousins. That might change. And in the NFL, guaranteed contracts do not exist in the same way as they do in the NBA. When you sign a contract, it's not like you just stay on. Although some people have been traded off teams, retired off of teams, and they're still getting paid. So you see, in that kind of situation, the Cowboys, I think, are paying Tony Romo, who retired 2 years ago or something, about $14 million this year. That $14 million is going to go to Tony Romo regardless. He's owed that money. That money is going to be paid to him. Now, if the Dallas Cowboys had some situation where the entire team decided to start taking a knee and then people stopped showing up to the games, I don't think they would stop showing up. They'd still show up to the Cowboys games. It's the Cowboys. So if that kind of situation happened and then there was maybe a reduction of $14 million in revenue over that calendar year, that $14 million is still going to go to Tony Romo, still going to be paid to Tony Romo regardless. So you got to understand there is some money thing in there, and this is something that I've had to understand in my life, where I'm like, some of the things I say, some of the things I've done, some of the way I've carried myself is going to affect people who want to actually pay me for certain ways in certain things. There's people who are like, "I'm not going to do business with you because of certain things that you do, certain ways you appear." I get that. This is the way the world works. People are trying to get resources in certain ways and achieve things in other ways. And that's some point of hypocrisy that we've also seen there. Back to one last thing. I think this is going to be the last thing on the NFL thing. Been watching some more of the things and just thinking about the things. First of all, I'm going to get to the end where I'm talking about the division of labor just keeps coming out and keeps proving itself, and I have to keep reminding myself about some of these things. But first of all, this whole thing is like, hey, you can keep doing it. Nobody is stopping you from doing what you're doing. They're just saying there's consequences to your actions. And I think the protest itself, that's also what they're doing. They're saying people, police, certain people out there are doing certain things and there's no actual consequences to those actions. They're saying the black people who are being treated in this way are being treated unfairly. The consequences to the actions that these black people are taking are not appropriate. So we need to actually do something about that. We need to protest and say, hey, we need some fair treatment. So it's the same thing with the players. They're saying, hey, you can protest. You can do whatever you want. but there's going to be consequences. And the consequences are even going to the team and not directly to the actual athletes. Now, some commentators are saying this is going to cause division in the locker room because some people are going to stay in, some people won't. Like, the division was already there. This is the whole thing, like with Trump before. They're saying, oh, Trump caused all this division in the country. I'm like, no, anything Trump caused or anything that happened after Trump was just exposed by him. He just exposed the actual rifts and disagreements that were there already. And to me, exposing things, talking about things that actually exist as the way they are, is much better than pretending they don't exist and things like that. So the same thing. Don't pretend there's no issue with the police and the Black American and the African American community. That's part of the protest, right? So don't say there's no issue with actual people going out and protesting, taking a knee like everybody agrees with it. Now, that division of labor thing I was talking about, seeing your average sportscaster or average athlete talk about political issues is the same way as it would be if you just had your average politician go and try to talk about what's really happening in an NBA or an NFL game. Most people on both sides are more specialized in the things that they do. Somebody can go down there and break to you down the film of something going on and say all these things. And that's why I enjoy watching these people. The things they tell me about football are things that even me as an athlete who played it, I never got that deep into it. I was like, wow, there's so many other intricacies in this sports. And the more I've gotten into politics to understand that also, I'm like, wow, there's so much more into that. And I think a lot of these people, as I'm saying, anybody's allowed to have their opinion on who should have run what play at what time in what NFL game, whether they're right or wrong, or whether their play would have actually worked. And anybody is allowed to have whatever opinion they want about politics and say, this is why this is happening in this situation, whether they're right or wrong. So, yeah, that division of labor, I think, is a good thing I need to remind myself. And also remind myself, like, why are these people acting like this is a bad thing? They're saying this whole policy of you stay in the locker room if you want is completely okay, but there's going to be a fine. It's not going to change your actual protest or come out and still take a knee and still protest. There's going to be a fine. It's that simple. Like, how is this wrong? You stay in the locker room, no fine. You come out and do something, there's a fine, not directly to you, but to the team in general. And people are complaining about this. But at the same point, I don't really agree with the initial reason that they were protesting. So if I thought they had the same kind of standards of proof or evidence from as I do for me to protest something, for me to have a problem with something, then they wouldn't have taken a knee or supported the whole knee process to begin with. Because after Kaepernick took a knee, they would have gone in and looked at the information that he's ostensibly taking a knee for, and then found out that there's not enough information in there for them to support it. And then they'd have been like, okay, yeah, I don't really think that's something I support. So in a similar situation like this, they would have been able to analyze the material there and say, hey, yeah, I can still protest and I don't get fined directly, or I can stay in the locker room, then nobody gets fined. So there's no problem with that. But the fact that their level of annoyance, of issue, of taking umbrage with this issue is a lot different than mine. I don't want to say lower because it's based on a whole different set of material or requirement of evidence than it is for me. So that's a good thing to remember. Remember that other people are not really working with the same kind of expectations as you are. Silas here. Thanks for watching. That's the end of the video. So with me, I'm wearing this Hilltopper sweatshirt. I got this back in like 2005 or 2006 from my college. And just recently on a social media platform, somebody opened a group for one of my ex-coaches. He was also an ex-player at this team. He invited me to this group where they're just starting with alumni from the football team of this college. And it's a small college, and people were kind of getting back in there, people from the 50s and 60s. Someone's like, hey, how about people from the 50s and 60s who don't use social media? How do we get in touch with these people? And maybe I might offer a website where you can still have something. But just seeing people coming back and talking about how much time they enjoyed, coaches talking about how much time they enjoyed with the players saying, hey, have you talked to this so-and-so? Can you get in touch with such and such a person, where this person is? And then you see people from urban areas, from suburban areas, from cities, from up north, from down south in California and those places, coming to this place in West Virginia. Then you have people from the inner city, African Americans, black people from different races, people from small town United States of America, small town USA, and just how they come together, and this is the thing that's uniting them. So for some people, sports is just a game, or this is not that important. But for some people, it's something that that really gets them together, that really connects them together, and you can learn things from that. The same way you can just read a book. It's just a book. It's just some papers. Depending on who you are, you can just read it and be like, ah, this is very boring. This is very nothing. Or this could be a life-changing book to you. This could actually be something that teaches you something about life that completely leads you on a different step. And I think with football, it's been a lot to other people. Might have talked about this in previous videos, but probably talk about my football experience a bit more, focusing on that, on different highs and lows that I've seen, on the dedication levels that people were involved with the sport. But for me, it was a great experience. It's something I still cherish and something I still get benefits from. And yeah, so that's it for this video. Like, share, and subscribe. Let me know what you guys think about this. If you've played any sports, if there is some of that camaraderie where maybe if you've played football and another sport and you think, oh, there's actually more camaraderie in that sport than there is in football in your experience, or do you guys have other sports that you've played where you still kind of go back and you have this kind of history with it? I don't know if they have homecoming games when it's involved with what's it called, with other sports, if there's homecoming week where other sports play their games too. But I know with football, that's one thing. From high school, they had the homecoming game where this was the time when actually people were supposed to come back to high school, come back to college, and then they actually go out and watch a football game on that weekend, and there's normally a dance and things like that. So I think American football is very tied into Americana, to the society and to the culture. And I'm very thankful for the people who actually let me participate in that, and it was a window into America in a way, and I think that has made me kind of part of that in a way. And one last thing, yeah, with my school, it was in an international area, so there's a lot of kids who were first generation Americans, second generation Americans, things like that, who were also getting to know the society and the culture in a different way. It was kind of a thing where we might have our separate home lives, but when we came to the field, when we were at the practice field, when we were playing, we'd have a very similar kind of experience that would unite us in a way. We'd have a lot of people who would talk a lot during practice, but then you'd hardly talk when you leave. You'd go out and you do your own things, go to your own churches, go to your own social events, hang out with your own people. And even in the lunchroom in some situations, they would kind of sit with their own people, but I kind of tended to jump around to different groups and things like that. That whole inability to glom onto like one group, I think, in a way it worked. I mean, the football, the athletes and things like that, but I had some friends that did play football. Well, anyway, that's just something that I've had, that social chameleon kind of thing, which has positives and negatives. But yeah, thanks for listening. Like, share, and subscribe. Till next video. Goodbye.